Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Today, before I start, I wanted to clarify a couple of things with the neurolines. One of the questions I got when somebody reached me offline was she drew a neuroline and asked me if this was okay. So I'm going to attempt to duplicate it. Alright, something like this, like this, for all technical reasons, it is sort of a neuroline, but then it's also not really a neuroline. If you cover this part up, this would be more of a neuroline than this, because I see a repeating pattern here. Now, if you were to improve on this, and also one of the reasons why this came out this way is also because you drew it pretty fast. So when you draw pretty fast, you tend to have straight lines, like really smooth straight lines, really smooth lines in the pattern. In Neurographica, a really good neurographic lines, there'll be some waviness along the way, okay? Because apart from the fact that each neuroline is a thought, each neuroline is also a line of energy in your drawing. So you would have to make it a little bit more wavy than it is. So for example, that's why I'd advise drawing a little slower, because then you can have a little bit more waviness along all these lines. So what I would say is that in order to make this a better neuroline, maybe this bump here would have to be turned another way, and so is this one. It has to be something different. So instead of that, maybe something like this. Okay, now if you look at this line, the differences between these two lines, this is a little bit more chaotic, and this is a bit more smooth and orderly. We don't want smooth and orderly in Neurographica. We want chaos, a bit of chaos. Okay, so your brain doesn't like orderliness, in a manner of speaking. I mean, if you imagine which of these two lines you're probably going to see in a plant's root. Yeah, I mean, if you think about the roots of a plant, the root hairs of a plant, they don't look like this. They look closer to this. Other than that, when you look at these two lines, which one do you think? Which one do you feel? Which one has the feeling of a more energetic flow? I won't tell you which one. You should be able to decide for yourself just by looking at it. Draw it on your own and find out. Okay? That's why you should do it slower. Okay? So apart from that, today I was thinking about teaching you a full-blown Neurographic algorithm, but I decided to push it back to the next tutorial. Instead, I'll introduce to you the basics of what we will be doing in the next tutorial, so you'll be ready. Alright? So what I will be introducing to you today is called a neurotree. Okay, a neurotree looks like a tree, except that a neurotree is an abstract tree. Okay, and a neurotree has this property that it can grow, which means if you find that an A4 sheet of paper is too small, you can add on to it like this. Okay, you can keep adding on to it, and some people have made really tall trees by like adding on more paper like that. I'll show you an example of what this person did with a neurotree, because you find that the A4 sheet is too small. You can add on to as much as you want, as many as you want. So let me show you this picture. So as you can see, the person who drew this tree, one sheet of paper wasn't big enough, so they had to tag on extra pieces of paper to complete the drawing. So this is kind of basically how a neurotree looks like, and every line you see there is a neurographic line. Is a neuro line. There are no exceptions in Neurographica. Every line in the Neuroart or neurographic art is a neuro line. Okay, so without talking about anything further, let's get into the drawing. So today I'm gonna doing something a little bit different. You don't have to copy me. The reason you see these two pen here is that this one is a draws a thicker line, and this draw like ultra fine lines. Okay, you don't have to use these. It's just that I wanted to use it to show you the difference being able to draw different lines on the picture. The differences it will make. I might use more than just these two. Maybe this one too. It's just different line thickness. Okay? Alright. So a neurotree, when you start drawing a neurotree, you want to do a shape. So there's like the roots, the trunk, and the crown. And when you draw a neurotree, always bear in mind the balance. You can't have big roots and small crown, or small roots and big crowns. So if you look at the logo down here, within that logo is a neurotree. So what I mean by the neurotree is that you look at the bottom, the fan of the roots and the fan of the crown must look almost the same. And your trunks, the trunk of the tree must look like it can support the crown. Okay? So when you first start, you want to start drawing from the bottom of the page to reach to the top. Okay? So your first line, your first two lines is to make the general shape of the tree, and then you can correct or add more lines in as we go along to adjust the size of the tree and the branches on top. Okay? Alright? So if I'm looking at this, I'm thinking like, well, the chunk's a little narrow. I can make it a little bit thicker just by going over here, doing this. Okay, there are no wrong ways to draw this, except that you gotta make it balance. That's the only thing. Okay, so now if I widen the roots if I want to widen the roots a little bit, I'll just draw some more lines. Like, say I want to draw a line all the way up here. Okay? So I'm going to draw a few more lines before I switch pens. So there are no wrong ways to draw your tree. It's like you just kind of want to make it look like a tree, make it look nice for yourself. Okay, I think we're good here, so I'm going to start doing rounding. Oh, one more thing I forgot to mention. When you're drawing a neural tree, don't ever rotate your paper. You can shift and tilt it slightly, but that's it. Do not rotate your paper, okay? Because remember what I told you in the first lesson, that whatever you see, your brain takes in. So if you rotate your paper to the side, what does it become? It doesn't look like a tree anymore. So if you drew down there, you're losing that part where you just drew. The possible new neural pathway that you just drew if you tilt it this way and draw. So always remember to always keep your drawing on the vertical format. Don't rotate it. You can shift and tilt, that's fine. Do not change the rotation of the paper. Okay, so next, now with the Neurotree, in the part with their roots, you're supposed to draw circles to represent your resources, and in the crown area, you're also supposed to draw circles to represent the fruits. So because we're still in the we're still doing Neuroart, there's more to a Neurotree than just the tree, the resources, and the fruits. There's like a lot more to it, which I will go into it the next tutorial. But for now, just draw circles for your resources, any number that you want, and circles for your fruits, any number that you want, with the condition that your root part and your crown part must look balanced. You can't have more resources in your roots and less in your fruits. Okay? They must look about the same. Yeah, I forgot to round this one little thing here. Okay, so I'm gonna start drawing my roots, my resources. Okay, with the resources, if you have a big resource, as in the previous lesson I mentioned, you can draw a partial circle and it'll extend out. That's why you can add extra paper if you want, but for today, just draw the partial circle. If you do, you can add extra paper on your own if you want. I'm not going to do it, so I'll just give an example. Okay, it's a partial circle. You can name the resource if you want, but for today there's no necessity. The next tutorial, we will need to be naming resources. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, your tree must look balanced. So if I have a huge resource here, I must have another huge one here. Okay, so I'll round them later. So at this point in time, you kind of draw resources and fruits wherever you feel like there should be some, and then you start balancing them after. Okay, so any number that you want. So now, before I round them, I'm kind of taking a look to see if they're balanced, and I feel like I need to add like a couple of smaller resources at the root level. Now your circles can overlap, it's fine, okay? Like this. You just need to round them later. Okay, now it feels good. So now I'm going to do rounding. Okay, I'm pretty much done with the drawing. So the next step is coloring. Alright, um, as far as coloring is concerned, there is a little bit of difference in the rules that I mentioned in the last tutorial. Because this is a neural tree, the flow is up. So when you are doing your coloring, you want to do the coloring with an upward flow. So when you're doing your coloring, you must show that the energy flow it's from the bottom up, from the bottom up. So it's best if you have you find like a color and then a strand, and then you just kind of trace your way up there, or you can color the whole tree brown with some green up there. That's fine. And then all your fruits, if you want to have different colors for each fruit, is okay. Only for this. Okay? Yeah. In this algorithm, the number of colors you use doesn't really matter, as long as after you're done coloring, there's a visible flow of it from the bottom going up. Okay, again, the most important thing is no mosaic coloring. You don't color each different segment as one different color. No, don't do that. Okay, no mosaic coloring. Color with the flow going up. Alright? So for this coloring, I am probably gonna use experiment with watercolor pencils. You can use whatever you have on hand. Alright? Hello, so I'm done. I actually had to cheat a little bit because I was not very happy with what the watercolor pencils did with the black lines. It was a little messy, so I had to pause the recording and go over the lines a little bit. Other than that, I'm done. And main thing to remember when you're doing Neurotree is that the tree is balanced. It's not skewed in any way. Okay? I will emphasize this again in the next video. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask on the Facebook page. And feel free to join the group. There's a NGASG group. Please join the group, post your paintings, and if you want feedback, I'll give you my feedback on about the tree. Okay? Thanks for watching. I will talk to you again in the next tutorial.